Welcome to Dodgers Dogs. As part of the Dodgers Daily Network, Casey Porter here, joined by Austin Brubaker. It is Wednesday night in the big town, so glad that you decided to join. We have a lot to talk about tonight, Austin.
It's going to be a fun show, Casey. Good to see you again. Our hearts continue to go out to the people in California. Continue to be praying for you guys. Snowing here in the great state of Michigan, so dealing with a little bit with that weather. Nothing compared to what's going on out there, though. So we're still thinking of you guys, but happy to be talking a little bit of Dodgers baseball and provide a little bit of distraction for everybody.
Yeah, 100%. So the big distraction is Roki Sasaki. It is down in Toronto, San Diego, and the Dodgers. And so it was announced just a couple of days ago that the Dodgers were holding off all of their international prospects and hoping they would sign in 2026. And I covered them fairly in detail on Sunday. Let me put this back up on the board here. Right there. They're seeing, right? Austin, you're not seeing this, but the crowd is. These are the international signings from the DR. And if you were, as part of the show on Sunday, I mentioned these two top guys right here, Tylon Serrano and Darrell Morel. Those were the two headliners. And guess what? Those are the two that decided not to wait until next year. They went ahead and signed with other clubs. That was not a surprise whatsoever. The Dodgers knew that was going to happen. They got antsy. And so the rest of these guys, the right-handed pitchers, big, tall dudes, but still a lot of development left to do. They are not the headliner type guys. So I would imagine they are guys that probably would wait until 2026, but Darrell Morel is just a fantastic prospect. So that's not a surprise whatsoever that he is moving on, even if the Dodgers don't get Roki Sasaki and still have that international pool money. So this is not anything to be alarmed about. It was a situation to where it wasn't something that was a guarantee the Dodgers were going to get Sasaki because they're holding off the international signings, but it was a situation to where it showed that they are pulling out all the stops, and they're even talking about trying to trade for some more international bonus pool money now too.
Yeah, it is. The Dodgers are recognizing the talent and the opportunity to get a player of a caliber of Roki Sasaki, and not just the talent level that he has, the price point and place of where they're getting. They would be paying and getting for a probably close to, if not already big league ready, with potential very high upside level starting pitcher that's ready to go in the big leagues during the 2025 season. It is a very talented, very, especially for the price wise and for the years of control that would happen, because getting Roki Sasaki happens during the exact same period because of when he's coming over as all of these guys that are signing from the Dominican Republic, from Venezuela, from all of these Latin America countries that are coming in, signing at 16, 17, 18 years old. You're getting one of those guys, but he is big league ready and could have an impact value in your rotation. That is what's so exciting about Roki Sasaki. He would cost for the big league club the league minimum, and especially for the upside potential that he has. The Dodgers see it as no choice but to do everything that they can to try to bring in a talent like that, especially when we've seen all of the different injuries that have happened from pitchers. If you can get a talent like Roki Sasaki, then you do whatever you can with your international pool money to be able to go and help your big league club in 2025. And what we've seen from the Dodgers, and this is something similar-ish to what we've seen with San Diego and Toronto, albeit I don't know exactly all of their different signings, if they made some signings with international free agents. I wasn't able to find any immediate ones right now. Those teams, the three front runners, the three teams, the finalists for Roki Sasaki, are trying to do everything that they can to get Roki Sasaki, which means the international bonus pool money, while that might not be the ultimate deciding factor, it could play a factor into Roki Sasaki's decision. And when they're this bought in, especially with a lot of guys that they've scouted for a little bit, that they've identified as players who have had talent, they're deciding to move off for the chance to get Roki Sasaki. So a little bit of a risk, but for the upside that Roki Sasaki has, I think it's definitely well worth it.
It is, and here's there's no risk to it, and other than what, $8 million if you end up signing it, if you find $3 million in bonus pool money through trades or whatever it might be, and you have the $5.1 million already. So let's say you sign him for $8 million. You're signing a minor leaguer. So other than just the bonus itself, right, of the $8 million, Roki Sasaki is going to be a minor leaguer just like everybody else is. So he's going to have he's signing a minor league contract. So he's going to have the 3 option years like everybody else, just like any other prospect would have. And here's the difference. So you say, well, this is confusing. Why is international bonus pool money being a question here when it wasn't for like Yoshinobu Yamamoto? So if there's a certain amount of time to where these guys can post as professionals, and Roki Sasaki, as far as major leaguers, and Roki Sasaki is not to that point in his career. So the way I understand it is he's still 2 years away from posting as a major leaguer. So at this point, he is still, because he's jumping the gun a little bit, he has decided to sign as an amateur to get kind of a jump start on this. So he is signing as an amateur in this signing, whoever he signs with. And because he's signing as an amateur, he then falls under all the prospect rules. And one of the prospect rules is when you sign an international player, then you have to use your international pool money to sign that player with, right? So because he is signing as an amateur 2 years early, if he waited 2 years later like Yamamoto did, then he would be a major league contract and none of this would matter. But because he's signing 2 years early, now he's a prospect. Now he's subject to all of these international bonus pool situations because he is like every other international prospect. So saying that, the bad part of it is you do have to use your international bonus pool money. You can't just sign him to a major league contract and not worry about it from that perspective. But the good part of it is, just like Hae-Sung Kim, once you get him, you're getting basically a major league ready type player. Maybe one, as you said, that's upper echelon, but has 3 minor league option years, and you have the buffer of knowing if he needs a transition period, you can do that with him however long you need in the next 3 years in the minor leagues. It's an amazing situation, and it's why the Dodgers are going full blown to go get this guy, and it makes all the sense in the world to trade whatever prospect they have to, whatever they need to do to get Sasaki. It's a win-win all the way around.
It absolutely is a win-win. And because he's coming over as an amateur, I don't think they immediately, I don't believe they have to immediately add him to any sort of 40-man roster. It could be whenever the Dodgers feel like he is ready to be at the big league level. It could be that he comes over and he's immediately part of the starting rotation. I think that's the expectation for a lot of different Dodgers fans. That he comes over and there might be a little bit of a transition period. The Dodgers have the ability to send him down without even using one of those options until he's ready to be called up because he is an amateur. I believe that's how the rules are written, especially because of other international free agents coming in. It is a very good situation with Roki Sasaki. He is if you're just talking about pure production or potential for production, I'll put it that way, potential for production and financial costs during this offseason, he is the biggest prize as far as the most bang for your buck that you could potentially get. Not that you will get, just because we can't see the exact future, but as far as how people are seeing Roki Sasaki, because you're just using international bonus and you're not signing him to a deal like Yamamoto where you got over 300 million, that's not going to be anywhere close to Roki Sasaki and what he's going to get. You're going to get years of control for him. 100%. This was a decision that he very consciously made because he could have waited a couple more years and potentially got a contract similar to Yamamoto. He wanted to come over a little bit earlier because this opportunity is here now, and because he has that potential for extreme level of talent, for extreme levels of production, the Dodgers have to take advantage of as much of these opportunities as they can, because if they can gather these type of players for these types of contracts, that means they can use the savings for that to go out and get somebody else that is of high level of production that's going to cost a little bit more and just increase the talent level just that much more. I think because he's big league ready and because he is right there, they're going to take their chances and do whatever they can to go out and get a Roki Sasaki and try to help build this dynasty, because if they add him, his potential for extreme production is just that much higher. And it could be, if it's based off of what a lot of people are talking about, potentially another high-end arm in this rotation that just seems to have right now, you go through 1 through 4, it's just ridiculous in a postseason series, the projections right now.
Yeah, so it's interesting to me that he's deciding to come out as an amateur because Yoshinobu Yamamoto signed how much? What was 325 million or something? Was it Yamamoto?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And he's 2 years away from that. And now we're talking about $5 to $8 million in bonus pool money as an amateur. And then if you're subject to all the amateur rules, like you have to have 6 years of service time to become a free agent. You have to have 6 years of minor league service to be a free agent in the minor leagues. And so if this happens, then of course you have your 3 arbitration years. But then, I mean, you're 6 years away from signing the big contract. Whereas Yamamoto, if you just wait 2 more years, you get the big contract that Yamamoto got. So it's confusing to me why Sasaki is coming out early. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me from his end of it. So I would have to think because of that. I know he's saying that the international bonus pool money is not the determining factor, but I'm calling baloney on that because money talks and BS walks. I mean, when people say that, here's how I take that. Okay, it's like when you say, "Well, he's a good kid. He's here every day," right? As a coach, you say, "Well, that doesn't mean that he gets to play. He still has to be the best player." But I'll tell you what that could mean. It could mean that player wins a tie over another kid that's not here every day, right? So the bonus pool money, to me, could, if he's exactly tied, it could break the tie there. Now, if he just wants to be a Dodger and he thinks that eventually from an endorsement perspective, that would be the most lucrative place for him to be, so be it. But it's an interesting situation for me. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but hey, super excited to see what happens.
I'm excited to see what happens. I think that leads to some of the unpredictability as far as his signing and where he's actually going to go. Because in reality, I don't think really any of us know exactly where Roki Sasaki is thinking about going, what the determining factor is. I think obviously we're biased here. Dodgers Daily, hint the title, where we want Roki Sasaki to go. But I think that I think there's a lot of very good things to be had in Los Angeles if he decides to go to LA, just with the talent that he's surrounded by. I have a little bit of concerns potentially long term for the success of both San Diego and Toronto. I don't know if that's something that is at top of mind, but he certainly has the chance to be towards the front end of their rotation if he wants to stand out there. There's a lot of different determining factors in this decision for Roki Sasaki for international pool money. I know the Dodgers, because of a lot of the signings, because of the competitive balance things, or whatever the penalties have been, there have been some penalties that have reduced a little bit the Dodgers international pool money over the course of the past couple of years. So they're actually in one of the lower brackets. Actually, I think the lowest bracket. And so their international pool money that they're able to offer to players isn't as much as other organizations because the Dodgers keep signing high-end level talent. So that could be something that's a little bit concerning for the Dodgers, which is why I think there's been some rumors about them wanting to acquire additional international pool money, which you can trade for. I think it's in increments of 250,000. I think is what you can trade for. You can trade for a little bit of that at a time. Yeah, you can go ahead and do that.
So like you can't make one trade and get all 60% of your original bonus pool money all back in one trade. It has to be 250,000 at a time.
Yes. That's exactly right. So it's tough trying to decipher and try to figure out exactly what Roki Sasaki is going to do. We know that these teams are the finalists or have been reported as the finalists for Roki Sasaki. Outside of that, there's been meetings with both San Diego. There's been meetings with LA. There's been meetings with Toronto. Over the next course of the next couple of days or so, I think is when we're going to hear exactly what Roki Sasaki's decision is.
Or on tonight's show. Who knows?
It could happen during tonight's show. It might have already happened.
It might have. I'm leaving that up to you, Austin. You're better at the notifications. I turn off all my notifications.
You got it. I'll keep checking my phone for that.
Okay, hey, we have a super chat already from our rock star Roy Song. Hey, Casey and Austin, are the Dodgers holding off on signing Flaherty until Sasaki decides, or is he gone regardless? Think Sasaki meeting us last for the second time is a good sign. Thanks, guys. I would have to say it's either or with Sasaki or Flaherty or neither. Mm-hmm. I just can't imagine any scenario where it's both. the math just doesn't add up.
Yeah, it's really tough right now to be able to see that happens. And the way that I'm explaining this, or think it's best to explain this, has to do with the Dodgers and their ability to move guys up and down and to make 162 games work without overwhelming bullpen pieces, without overwhelming your starting rotation. You need to have flexibility to move guys up and down. And as of right now, if the season were to start tomorrow, and you're just talking about guys that are likely to be healthy, likely to start the season, you're talking about 10 guys that you either can't move down or very likely won't move down at this point. And those guys, and this is not counting Shohei Ohtani. I view him completely as bonus pitcher once he is able to start and actually pitch in the starting rotation again. For starting pitchers, you have Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, Yoshi Yamamoto, and right now Tony Gonsolin. Gonsolin does have a minor league option, but if he's healthy, I don't anticipate the Dodgers using that, or at least I won't expect that. So that's 4 pitchers. And then
he's at least going to get first shot, yes.
Very much so. And then out of the bullpen, you have Kopech, Trinan, Phillips, Banda, Brazier, and Vesia. Vesia does have one minor league option. He, again, is not one of those guys that's going to be sent down to the minor league level.
And I'll tell you another thing. They just signed Banda for a little over $1 million. That's like the steal of the offseason. Like, you have these huge deals, and like they have the splash deals. It's not the highlight. It's not the headline. But it could be, because when you look at value versus cost, that Anthony Banda deal. So you were thinking, well, Anthony Banda might be one on the chopping block because you need 26-man roster spots. Well, now that he signed for so cheap, man, that makes it make not any sense whatsoever to get rid of Anthony Banda, because you're getting a hell of a lot more production than you're paying for.
Yeah, it's a really good deal right there. With those pitchers, and those are guys that I would anticipate being ready to go for opening day, or I think have a really good shot to. That's 10 out of your 13 pitchers that you can have. Again, 14 only includes Shohei Ohtani, so we're not going to count that. Shohei Ohtani is the 14th pitcher. So the 13 pitchers that you have, that means you have 3 open spots for guys that can be sent down, and that is not counting guys like a Dustin May, who won't have any minor league options if he's healthy. That's not including a Clayton Kershaw, who I know probably won't be ready to start this season, but at some point will likely be called up. If you add in a Jack Flaherty, that means that you only have 2 guys that could be sent up and down to help fill in some innings. That means that other guys out of the bullpen, and that's not even including if you want to make another addition to the bullpen and try to go out and get a Tanner Scott, or want to go out and get a Kirby Yates, or whatever reliever that you want to add in. You start to shrink the maneuverability with the pitching staff, which is one of the things that the Dodgers have done quite a bit to keep the pitching staff as healthy as they possibly can. Try not to wear out these guys, and especially the guys in the bullpen who had a very heavy workload during the regular season and during the postseason last year. What you can't do is gridlock your pitching staff to where you have 12 or 13 guys out of your pitching staff that can't be sent down, which means you are waiting for an injury to happen before you can even get somebody to be called up and do the back and forth type of deal. You can't have that happen. Otherwise, the bullpen is going to get worn out because of the need for the bullpen in a 6-man rotation, and you're just going to start to wear things down far too early. You need a little bit more maneuverability with that. So I'm not completely there with Jack Flaherty. I get it, especially if he's willing to sign a shorter term deal. And I get the feeling for a need to want an additional starting pitcher as well. I think they have other guys that maybe not reach the exact same standard pitching wise that Jack Flaherty is going to get at the major league level. But one of the things that they could potentially do a little bit better is provide a little bit of maneuverability and try to keep the other guys healthy. That's one of the things I'm focused on and concerned about is what moves can we make to try to make sure that Tyler Glasnow, that Blake Snell, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and Shohei Ohtani are able to get to October healthy. Yeah.
So there's 39. We have a question on here. There's actually 39 on the 40-man roster. Mm-hmm. So Roki Sasaki, he would not sign. He wouldn't have to sign until spring training, correct?
He would not have to be added to the 40-man roster until the Dodgers would be ready to call him up to the big league level.
Yeah.
So it'd be
Right.
just like if they, it's just like whenever they want to call up Dalton
Yes.
Rushing. He's
Yeah.
not on the 40
They're going to
man
have to
roster.
select his contract and that whole process, right?
Yes.
Right. So he doesn't have to get added to the 40-man roster for 3 years. Technically, right? Because he has 3 minor league option years. And if the Dodgers bought him out of international free agency and then left him in the minor leagues for the next 3 years, then he would be on a minor league contract for those next 3 years. And so they will not have to actually put him on the 40-man roster until they select his contract. So what happens when a minor leaguer gets called up to the major leagues that aren't on the 40-man? The Dodgers have to select their contract, and they have to change that contract to become a major league contract. And now those players make major league wages based off the minimums. They start getting service time added up and all that kind of stuff. So at this point, Sasaki's not in that category. So until the Dodgers actually select his contract and put him on the 40-man roster, he is following all the rookie rules. So the Dodgers are at the advantage, or whatever organization gets Sasaki, because they can choose when to put him on the 40-man roster.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Now, there could be, and there probably was conversations between Sasaki and what other organization, and there could be very much an expectation that Roki Sasaki is going to start the season at the big league level. I think that's probably the expectation for a lot of people, and probably even with Sasaki. And it certainly
I don't know that he has that
conversations.
ability to even do that, though, within the bylaws, though.
I don't know exactly what are all the rules and what are all the conversations that they can have. I know that he has the ability to sign with whatever team that he wants to sign, and I'm certain there's been conversations about roles within teams and roles within organizations. So
he's squarely signing a minor league contract, though.
Yes,
that's not debatable.
Yes.
So he falls under the minor league rules, and until the Dodgers select his contract, he is a minor leaguer, and he's following minor league rules.
Yep, and the Dodgers would have the ability to enforce that with a Roki Sasaki situation to our best understanding of all the different rules and stuff. And there could be some, just because he's coming in a little bit later, I don't know if there's any sort of differences with any of the rules, but I believe these are the rules that he is under. An incredible talent, and I think he's going to get every shot if he comes to the Dodgers to earn a starting pitching role within this organization. And I think he's going to have every opportunity to go out and showcase his talent. And I think there's just so many good things and benefits with getting this player, especially with the type of upside that he has. It is like getting a extreme top-notch prospect to come into your organization and have be big league ready.
Yeah, 100%. And so it's an interesting situation with him, and got a chance to talk to my man Robo today, Justin Robleski. Super excited about that. Hope you enjoyed our interviews this week so far with Dylan Campbell. DC, isn't he awesome?
Oh, DC is amazing, man.
His humbleness, his humble nature towards everything, but supreme confidence in his abilities is amazing. And then Peyton Martin, he's just a dude you'd like to go to the bar and drink a beer with, right? I mean, shoot a game of pool with, throw some darts, that kind of thing. You'd have a hell of a good time. You'd probably end up in a fight, so you better be ready, because he's probably going to say something. He's probably going to say something that's going to piss somebody off at some point. Oh, yeah. So you better be ready. You better be on guard at all time, because he's just kind of loose. No, I'm joking, of course. But what an awesome dude. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation. And then one of my favorites. I'm going to say this point blank. I wrote the article today. I'm going to advertise the article tomorrow. Griffin Lockwood Powell. Lock, Griff, GLP. I think they called him Whiffy when he was littler. Okay, whatever you want to call him. So at Dodgers Daily, we root for all of these prospects. 100%. There's just no debating that whatsoever. But I think if you follow our Dodgers Dog show, or you read any of our articles, or you kind of catch the tone of which we talk with, these guys like Austin Gauthier, Jack Dreyer, Justin Robleski, Griffin Lockwood Powell, that are underdogs, that have zero sense of entitlement to them, that don't expect to be given anything, and that know that Drew Avens, Ryan Ward, guys like Cody Hosey, that know that they have to earn every single thing that they get. I'm not going to lie. Those guys, to me, I root for a little bit harder. And I can tell you that guy that's at the top of that list, Austin Gauthier, Jack Dreyer, Griffin Lockwood Powell. This dude is just He just absolutely puts his nose down to the grindstone every day. He works, and he just is thankful for every shot that he gets after being an undrafted free agent out of Central Michigan. So it was an honor to get to speak with him, tell a little bit of his story. What an awesome dude.
Yeah, GLP Lock. I didn't call him Whiffy when he was in Great Lakes, but I'm gonna start doing that now. Whiffy, no, Lock. He's an incredible dude, man. Just phenomenal human being. You could just tell that from where he was at. Just humble, grateful to be wherever he's at. And he talked about the skill level. There's a lot of skill in his game, and the way that the positional versatility in the game of baseball is going, and especially with the need for that at the catching position, his ability to play first base. You've said he played a couple of games in the outfield at some point, not a whole lot, but potentially some a little bit down the line to add some additional positional versatility. And there's still some pretty good raw power in Grail Finlock Powell's bats too. Just a humble guy who's worked for every single opportunity that he's got. Grateful to see, or really cool to see his story coming out. Yeah, he's just an amazing dude. So many of those people within this organization that you get to see, and those stories need to be told as well.
They do. Okay, so let's get back to business here. We have a $10 super chat from a rock star, CNAV Christopher Navarro. As a pivot, sign Flaherty or trade prospects for Seattle's Luis Castillo. So I'll have you dive into Luis Castillo. And the question is, how did we meet? One in Michigan, the other in Oklahoma. Love the show. Well, Austin just was like you guys. He started posting on the Dodgers Dawgs show. I noticed that he went to all the Great Lakes games. I noticed that he seemed to be like at all of them, right? And knew all about high A Great Lakes. And I have no access to Michigan, right? I've never even been to Michigan. And so it was like, well, hey, man, it'd be cool to get this guy on and do a show for the Loons, right? And so we kind of talked about doing that for like 6 months. And then finally we got together, did a show like a couple of Julys ago. And it was like, oh, hell yeah, let's go, man. And so we both love the prospects. We both have access. Austin has access to the high A level. I have access to the double and triple A levels. And so we started covering a lot of the prospects and then also the LA Dodgers as well. And so here we are. That's how all that started.
Yeah, no, it's funny that you mentioned that because I remember actually being a fan of the show. That's how it first started because you were talking about a lot of the different prospects that I was seeing in Great Lakes. You were talking about the Ryan Wards. You were talking about the Yorvin Vivas, the Eddies Leonard, Andy Pajes, all of these different guys that are with Great Lakes. Like, oh, sweet, this is amazing. Found you on Twitter. I don't even know how I did that. And then I just started sending videos to Casey because I think it started in 22 during the playoff series against Lake County at Great Lakes because I go to a lot of Great Lakes Loons games. And so I would send them there. And at the beginning of 23, sending them from wherever I was at, Peoria, West Michigan, Lansing, wherever. And it just came to a conversation of, hey, look, we both clearly enjoy baseball. We both clearly see what is happening at this development system. Let's go and actually have a conversation about that. So I think the first show was leading up to trade deadline stuff in 23. Talking about different guys, talking about different pitchers that the Dodgers could bring in. And then we just started talking about some more Loons baseball, which 23 was an amazing season for that. No, it's super fun to be able to do the show, but it didn't start off with any sort of special training on my end that I had. Yeah. Not at all. It actually, that's not technically true. That came from me during that time period actually being a teaching assistant at Western Michigan University. It's where I went to school. I was a teaching assistant. Now, when a lot of people hear that, they think, oh, you're going to sit at the back of the classroom, you're going to grade papers, whatever. That was not what I did. I was the actual instructor over there. And so I had to actually go as a graduate student and actually teach people statistics class over there, which was super fun, but forced me to be able to have a little bit of additional communication skills. You combine that with my passion and love for baseball, which clearly, and GLP can testify to this, with my ability and going to a lot of these different Great Lakes games on the road, traveling wherever they go. It just creates a level of passion for the game of baseball that's super fun. So I encourage you guys, lean into that passion of the game of baseball, and you'll be surprised where that takes you, because I just was a guy that was driving to a whole bunch of different Loons games because I love the game of baseball and because I enjoy doing that with friends, doing that with family, doing that with my brother, doing that with my cousins and stuff. Going back to the initial comment, though, because I don't want to make it just about history with us, talking about different pitchers and stuff. Luis Castillo is an interesting name. We know Seattle is looking potentially to find creative ways to adjust their payroll so that they can add some more offense to their game. Luis Castillo has been a really solid pitcher for both, since going back to his days in Cincinnati, then talking about his days in Seattle. Really solid pitcher. I think he's 32, 33, something like that. Signed for the next 3 seasons at about a little over $24 million. Would be a solid pitcher to be able to get. Really nice addition to this bullpen, or not to the bullpen, to the starting rotation. I just don't see, again, it's a very similar thing with Jack Flaherty, in that I don't necessarily see how the Dodgers would be able to maneuver things up and down, back and forth. One of the reasons why the Dodgers might consider a Jack Flaherty, and one of the reasons why they might have considered like a Walker Buehler, because they have a lot of pitchers that are young, that are coming up, that are injured during this year, that likely could be back during the 2026 seasons, is they probably want shorter term deals to fill in holes, to create a little bit more of that maneuverability on the roster. And committing to a contract like a Luis Castillo for the next 3 seasons means you're starting to add a lot of different pitchers that have extended contracts onto your roster with extended payroll. Yes, the talent very much is there, and I think it'd be a very good pitcher with the Dodgers. I just don't see one. I understand the want and desire for them to go out and get a starting pitcher because of how many pitchers have been injured. Why not rack up as many as you possibly can? And he certainly fits in the billing and the talent, and you might be able to get him a little bit cheaper given the price point. But I still think, and I think there needs to be a value of being able to move guys around to get through 162. That's what I'm most concerned about, is doing whatever I can to make sure that not all of the innings, not all of the stress gets put on the guys that you are relying upon in October, which there could be different moves. There could be different injuries that pop up. I'm more concerned about how can we get these guys through 162, which requires a couple of open roster spots, which are not really that much available right now.
When was the last time? I would be the wrong person to ask this, because I just don't even look at top prospects list. They have zero interest to me whatsoever. And to be honest with you, I don't want to have a preconceived notion of any player. I want to watch a player and be able to evaluate each player with a completely clean slate. And I would suggest that for everybody else, because you go into it with a preconceived notion that this guy is better than that guy, then you're not getting a true evaluation as far as what each player is. So I literally don't look at top prospects list. I couldn't tell you who's even on the top prospects list for the Dodgers. I know that if you have, I know there's some draft picks that you get if some of your guys get rookie of the year or whatever, and they're top prospect this and that. There's some financial incentive behind that. So you would be a better person to answer this question from Cole. When was the last time the Dodgers had 2 of the top 10 prospects and 3 in the top 25?
It's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that, is the short one. It doesn't happen very often. This is not something that happens to a lot of other organizations. I know like Boston has a couple of really highly touted prospects that are in a lot of lists towards the top 5 of prospects. But to have the Dodgers have 2 in the top 10, and the 2 that they are mentioning, I think this came from a list of Baseball Prospectus put out a list, which, as Casey had mentioned, I don't put too much weight into the prospect list. I'm glad that they exist because they actually provide some coverage to some of these guys, which often does not happen to a lot of these guys. I just don't put all my weight and focus on all of that, because a lot of these lists are about ranking a lot of the different tools and projectability with a lot of these guys, which is very difficult to project. All these guys have different tools, so I encourage you guys to watch for these for yourself. But I believe the two guys in the top 10 right now are Zyhir Hope and Josue Paula, ranked by Baseball Prospectus. And then in the top 25 would be a guy like a Dalton Rushing, I think is the guy that they were ranking in there. As far as having that group, having those different numbers of players, it varies because you have different organizations that are putting out these different lists. You have Baseball America, you have MLB Pipeline, you have other independent ones like Just Baseball. I know they do a good job and do a lot of research into data. You have a whole bunch of different people trying to put, and then obviously Baseball Prospectus, because we're talking about that. A lot of different people putting lists. It just goes to show you, and I think this is the big takeaway. There's a lot of tools, a lot of talent within this organization, and some players that have very extreme tools that are very projectable and have a lot of reason to be excited about within this Dodgers system if they're able to continue the development track that they have and able to give opportunities for these guys to come up to the big league level. Dodgers have a lot of talent to work with at the farm system still, which continues to show this organization's track record of development.
Yeah. So if the Dodgers don't get Sasaki, what do they do then? I'm gonna go ahead and put on the screen here the roster breakdown, and you have it in front of you. I broke it down like you did. Pitchers and position players. So here are the pitchers: Ohtani, Snell, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Gonsolin, May, Kopech, Trinan, Phillips, Vesia, Brazier, Bonda. That's 12. Then you have other pitchers in Kershaw, Sasaki, Scott, Grove, Enriquez, Miller, Dreyer. I actually misspelled Miller there. Dreyer, Knack, Robleski, Kasperius. So there's 12 that will be guaranteed on the 26. You get 13. Actually, the Dodgers get 14 with Shohei Ohtani now being a two-way player. Position players so far: Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Teo, Muncy, Will, Conforto, Edmund, Barnes, Rojas, Taylor. There's 11 guarantees, and the guys that you still have out there, possibly Kike Hernandez, James Outman, Hae-Sung Kim, and Andy Pages, all fighting for those last two spots, right? So if the Dodgers, let's cross Sasaki out, if the Dodgers don't get Sasaki, and then Clayton Kershaw, let's do this, Clayton Kershaw goes on the 60-day IL, what do the Dodgers do at that point? Is that a pivot to Tanner Scott, or is that a pivot to Jack Flaherty?
My initial indication, because there's been a lot of rumors that the Dodgers have been heavily interested in getting a bullpen piece. Yes. I think that's probably where they turn to. And yes, I think one of the reasons that they turn to that is because they have a lot of different arms that they can bring up and have start in this rotation. You still have a Landon Knack. That is an option, which is a very good option that most other organizations would love to have. He's not fully in the conversation of guys that are guaranteed a roster spot in Los Angeles because he's on the bubble with the amount of talent, and particularly the amount of talent that is not optionable at the minor league level. You also have a guy like a Bobby Miller who has flashed an insane amount of talent, still trying to figure things out, put things together after a very rocky 2024 season. If he comes back healthy to go in 2025 and all those skill sets comes together, I think the Dodgers want to leave that option open. So my first indication as far as where they would pivot to, again, assuming that they're going to sign Clayton Kershaw at some point, which he likely will be a 60-day injured list to start the season, so he won't come until halfway through the season. My guess is they pivot and try to sign some sort of big time reliever to help shore up the back end of the bullpen. I think that's probably what would help them the most in their minds, because I think they can get through the first half of the season with the influx of arms that they have. And it might even be a good thing that they do that because they have the ability to move guys up and down with the guys they have in this system. And then if they wanted to, or if there's a deal that makes sense for a first half in the season starting pitcher, after you take care potentially of the bullpen, that could be something that they look into, whether that's for signing guy to a one-year deal or even signing guy to a minor league contract with an invitation towards spring training. They could look at those options too. I would anticipate the first pivot would probably be to the bullpen. Yeah.
So right here, if the Dodgers do sign Sasaki, okay? Mm-hmm. So Sasaki, let's do this right here, okay? Let's add a row below, and let's put at number 13 Roki Sasaki. Okay, you can see this now, right, Austin?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Okay, so now how do you add Tanner Scott to that?
It becomes very difficult. That's assuming that a Dustin May is healthy, ready to go. That'd be the one question. But with that, Ohtani is number one. I always include Ohtani as bonus, so he's always the 14th. So I always think of
14,
13. Yeah, so there can be one more on 14, but then that leaves no real maneuverability and optionality for you guys, which means the Kopechs, the Trinans, the Phillips, the Vesia, Brazier, Banda, they're gonna get a lot of innings, and those guys aren't multi-inning guys for the most part.
Yeah. So you see what I did there on that number 14 spot, Austin?
Yeah.
The Dodgers have to keep that flexible spot. They have to keep a 14th spot. So yes, they do get 14 spots because Ohtani's a two-way, but still they're only going to want to carry 13 pitchers as far as guys that don't have minor league options, because they're going to need to keep that 14th spot as an up-down spot. So just kind of looking at this, if the Dodgers get Sasaki, signing Tanner Scott's going to be, well, it's going to really require the Dodgers to trade one of these guys, right? I mean, one of these guys above, would it be as simple as that?
Either that or they're counting on some type of injury to take place, which
between now and the beginning of the season.
Yes. Or something that happens within the beginning of the season.
But I mean, they're counting on an injury from one of these guys. Mm-hmm. And who would that be? I mean,
I have no idea.
That would be somebody we have not heard a thing about, right?
Either that or they're not anticipating a guy maybe like a Dustin May, just because of injury concerns that happened in the past. You potentially replace that spot, and then whenever he's healthy, try to find a way. Or they look to make, like as we talked about before, potentially trading either a Brazier or a Banda to open up a spot. That could be something that they look forward to. There is very little maneuverability right now, and that is something that has to happen in order to make it through 162.
So what I'm trying to tell you is to get Sasaki and Tanner Scott, you have one of two options. Either you don't have that 14th up-down spot right here, or you have to trade one of these guys. Those literally your only two options to have both Tanner Scott and Roki Sasaki both on this 40-man. Then let me add another wrinkle into that. You're going to eventually want Clayton Kershaw off the 60-day IL, right? Mm-hmm. And so now you're going to add Tanner Scott. Okay, and then let me do this right here. There's your 14. Okay, let me put a row below. And now at number 15, you're going to put Kershaw. So now, as soon as Clayton Kershaw comes off the 60-day, it's not even an if. Now you don't have an up-down spot, and you still have to trade one of these players right here. Or one of your options is you could move Tony Gonsolin down to AAA. Mm-hmm. Those are your only options. So if you move Tony Gonsolin down to AAA to make room for for Tanner Scott and Clayton Kershaw, now that's your 14, and you still don't have the up-down train. So that means Tony Gonsolin is stuck in AAA and can't come back because you don't have that 14th up-down spot of a player on your 26-man, of a pitcher on your 26-man roster that has a minor league option. So at that point, your only option is to send Tony Gonsolin down for good.
It is crazy. It is very difficult to get all of these spots, all these roster spots, which goes to show you the math behind the scenes. Yes, it would be great to have insurance like a Jack Flaherty to add in with their Roki Sasaki, because you're seeing all of the injuries that have happened over the past couple of years with the Dodgers, and you want assurance for the top level rotation spot. If you do that, yes, you'll have another arm that could potentially be something like that, but there won't be any sort of maneuverability, which means that you're going to get full stress on the guys throughout the regular season, and it's going to be reliant upon them to pitch all of the innings. It's going to be reliant on the bullpen to carry the load again during the course of the regular season without saving a spot for a guy that you can call up and down, or a guy that you could call up for a little bit and designate them for assignment, which does happen. They they had built in some innings, or at least have spent a lot of innings over the past couple of years for even guys like that. In order for those guys to actually come up and take that spot, there needs to be roster spots available, which you could say could come through the course of injuries, just because we don't know when those are going to happen. But if everything is all good, everything is healthy, then that's not even a good spot, because then you're stressing and overstressing, or putting a lot of innings on the guys on your roster.
Yeah. So we have another $10 super chat from CNAB, our rock star Christopher Navarro. The up down AK Rolodex, aka sacrificial roster spot. That's this one here. So without Clayton Kershaw, before you sign Clayton Kershaw, the numbers do add up where you could have Roki Sasaki and Tanner Scott, but then you don't have any room for an up down, so the Dodgers would be solely reliant upon manipulating the IL at that point to be able to bring new pitchers up. And then they've done that in the past. The Dodgers have manipulated the IL plus the up down train to pretty much create a quasi 6-man rotation in the past. When Clayton Kershaw comes back, the math just simply doesn't add up to have both. At that point, you got to get rid of one or the other. So another part of this that why I want to give you a visual is, if your suggestion is to trade somebody that's not on this list, okay, like a Grove, an Enriquez, a Bobby Miller, or a Jack Dreyer or whatever, that does not help you whatsoever with your math up here that we're talking about in these 14 spots, because they're not one of the guys taking up those 14 spots. So the math with the 40-man is fine. Where the math gets complicated is on this 26-man roster here, where you have 14 pitchers and you're trying to get Sasaki, Tanner Scott, and Clayton Kershaw all on the roster while not having to option Tony Gonsolin down to the minor leagues, and still having that final spot as an up-down train for your minor league pitchers. That's the complications right now. And then add into it, we mentioned earlier in the show that this guy right here, you might say, well, maybe he's expendable. Well, hell, he just signed for what, $1 million? I mean,
yeah, with his arbitration deal, yeah.
Yeah, he's like the cheapest good pitcher in baseball right now. So the signing for $1 million just made Anthony Bonda, in my opinion, very valuable, because he's a guy with Major League Worlds. Did he pitch in the World Series? I don't think he's got great experience with the Dodgers at $1 million. I mean, this guy's an absolute bargain. So if you're getting rid of Anthony Bonda, you're getting rid of one of the players on your roster that is a major underpay, right? And so there's been some difficult decisions, Diego Cartaya, Gavin Lux. And just by seeing what's happening, we're showing you right here, there are some difficult decisions coming up. The decisions are, don't get Sasaki, don't get Tanner Scott, or get them all and have to send Tony Gonsolin down, or get them all and trade a couple of guys off of this list right here. Something's got to give here between now and the beginning, or at least when Clayton Kershaw gets back.
Yes, yeah, that's where a lot of this can come in, is adding both of them without changing anything onto your 26-man roster. Just the math does not seem to add up at this point. And so I trust the organization. I think they've made I can't argue with any of the decisions that they've made.
Heck no.
And so I trust them, and they know this math as well. They know what they need to do. They know what is going to get them through 162. And they've talked a lot about their priority of making sure that their starters are as healthy as they possibly can be. I think that is going to be their top line priority for them during this upcoming season, trying to get these guys good, ready to go, and all healthy throughout the course of the regular season. And whatever decision that they make that they think is going to best get them through that point, I trust them to be able to do that.
So you still have these two spots right here, right? And you haven't signed Kike yet. So right now you're in good shape because you have two spots available for James Outman, Hae-Sung Kim, and Andy Pages. That's as good as you want it, because you're not going to have all three of those guys rostered on your 26. So as the math stands right now on your player, on the position player side of the 26-man roster, everything is absolutely perfect on that side. The one thing I can throw a wrench into that is if you go get Kike. Now, if you go get Kike, now you have two spots. Now you have one spot left for these three players instead of two, right? Which is why we've been telling you all offseason, Outman, these two guys right here only have one more year of minor league options. So if there's only one spot left for these three guys, that's going to squeeze Outman or Pages. And you don't want to squeeze them and then leave them at the end of the year with no minor league options. At that point, if you go get Kike, literally the next move you need to make is either trade James Outman or Andy Pages. That literally needs to be the next move because they have been squeezed out at that point.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be what we want is the Dodgers to get the most out of their players and get most out of the value. And if that is the case, then you're not taking advantage because you'd be losing a lot of value in both a James Outman, who, yes, still has value in a lot of organizations because of what he was able to produce in the 2023 season. And then Andy Pages as well. You would have zero flexibility moving forward with him, not just for the Dodgers, but for other organizations. And there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of excitement, rightfully so, about the talent level that Andy Pages brings in. And then that would leave a very difficult decision as far as what you do with a Ha-Seong Kim, who just got brought over to the Dodgers, who just had it creates not a whole lot of flexibility, which means the Dodgers would likely have to trade somebody in that option, or they'd have to find a way to move on potentially from a guy like a Chris Taylor, who I think if they could, they would replace Kike Hernandez with a Chris Taylor roster spot. But they also understand the legacy and the value that Chris Taylor has brought to LA. And I don't necessarily see the Dodgers doing anything but respecting Chris Taylor as best as they possibly can.
So are they gonna trade James Outman or are they gonna DFA Chris Taylor? If that roster, that's kind of what we're saying here. That's the I mean, never say never, but if the Dodgers sign Kike right here, okay, let me put Kike right here, Austin.
Yes.
Kike right there, okay, just to give a visual. That's 12. That means now, okay, between these three guys, now you have one spot left, that 13th spot. That means that you could, so what's going to, with one spot with these three guys, that means one of these three is getting squeezed out, right? Mm-hmm. Or Chris Taylor's gone. So at that point, the option is either you DFA Chris Taylor or you either trade James Outman or Andy Pages. So
or you
tell me what's the most likely
value in them. Yes.
Say it again.
Or you lose a lot of value in James Outman and Andy Pages by just sending them to Oklahoma City.
Correct, because they don't have any minor league options after this year, and they're like being upside down in a car. They don't have major league experience, but yet they don't have any minor league options. That's a terrible situation to be in. So you tell me what's the most likely scenario here? DFAing Chris Taylor or trading James Outman?
Most likely for the Dodgers would probably be trading James Outman.
Of course it would be, right?
Yes.
You're going to get, I mean, hell, he could be one of the, he could be one of the guys maybe, you can replenish your farm system with. So that's kind of why whenever people keep saying we need to get rid of Taylor, this, that, and this, that, I like to show it on paper to show actually probably the Dodgers have better options at this point because, to be honest with you, trading James Outman for James Outman's sake probably would be it's just like Gavin Lux. It'd probably be the best thing for him. And just from a numbers perspective, if the Dodgers get Kike, okay, then it's probably not that huge of a downfall for the Dodgers. Now, I understand he didn't have a good year last year, but he's produced at every single level, at every step of the way, including last year at the AAA level. He has produced at a very high level all the way through except for 100 at-bats last year. So,
and I would ask Dodgers fans, what does a James Outman or a player like that have to showcase? What sort of production level do they have to showcase at the minor league level to say, hey, we're worthy, you're worthy because of what you've done in the past, because you had a great 2023 season. We want to give you a second shot to see what you can do. What is that level? Because if you look at this 2024 season, which I want you to make the decision and termination in your head right now before I reveal what he produced last year, just WRC plus wise, make that determination first. Is it we want to see him produce at a 115, a 150, a 200 WRC plus? What exactly is that number? Because last year I think he had a 130 WRC plus in Oklahoma City. And it's very significant amount of playing time.
Yeah.
That shows
he was a
that,
AAA All-Star.
yes, that doesn't mean that is going to 100% translate over to the big league level, but he's hitting well enough at the minor league level that at some point, some team, whether that's the Dodgers or another organization, is going to want to give him another shot to see if he's another 4-win type of player. I know a lot of fans, because of 100 plate appearances that were not good at the big league level last year, want to completely give up on that player forever. But there's still a lot of skill set and a lot of talent. And he even showed last year, through all of his struggles, that he is worthy of getting at least some point, some sort of opportunity in the upcoming future. And he's still part of conversations that they have in discussion as far as this roster spot. So the organization is still keeping an eye out for him. And even if the Dodgers are like, yeah, we have to keep Chris Taylor as part of this roster, we want to bring up Kike, let's look to trade James Outman. Another organization is going to take advantage of that. And even the Dodgers, they have some players. They still have a Ryan Ward that's in the system that could potentially, if they need another outfield bat, albeit he does not play center field, could be a potential option for them to bring up within this system. They do have an Andy Pages who would get a little bit more playing time. Even right now, it's looking like platoon at bats maybe for Andy Pages, which I think is not the good situation and not exactly where you're wanting to be with him.
I would personally rather see him get traded than platoon. That's for my admiration for the human being.
Yes.
It's better for Andy Pages to get traded than be a platoon player.
Yep, I wanted him to be a starting corner outfielder, likely the right fielder for the Dodgers in this upcoming season.
Yes.
That is not going to happen with both Conforto and Teoscar Hernandez. That means that any sort of playing time that he has is going to come in center field. He's not going to be a straight platoon with Michael Conforto unless things go really wrong with Michael Conforto and he starts really struggling. Yes. That's not going to happen. They're going to give Michael Conforto probably 400, 450, 500 play appearances, which eats significantly out of Andy Pages unless he plays center field, in which case you have a lot of concerns defensively with a Conforto, Pages, Teoscar, unless Andy Pages is able to showcase a lot of improvements in center field.
Yeah. And none of them are going to do any good if you don't commit to them. So baseball is it's the hardest, hitting a baseball is the hardest skill to perform in any sport, right? Well, try doing that whenever you're getting inconsistent at bats, and then you're getting messages from your boss that, well, we kind of believe in you, but not really, and we're going to kind of give you a chance, but not really. We don't know exactly when that's going to be. We don't know what type of pitch. So imagine trying to do so Major League veterans at the peak of their career, they would struggle with a scenario to where they're only getting inconsistent at bats, and then every time that they went into a minor slump, they got yanked and removed from the lineup for a month. In the case of the prospects, the people it's being sent back down to AAA, right? The best of the best of the best ever in the world would struggle with that type of scenario in the game of baseball. So if the Dodgers are going to take position players, this is the one blind spot that I see with this organization. And unless you've played the game at a high level or you've seen what it does to people at a high level, it's very hard to understand that if you can't commit to somebody through the thick and the thin and say, hey, you're my guy, I don't care if you struggle, I believe in you, you're going to continue to be my guy, we're going to continue to work through it till you get that struggle. Until somebody knows that their organization has their back like that, you are never going to see even close to the potential of that player, because they're always going to be results oriented and not process oriented. And because of that, they're not going to relax. They're not going to settle down, and they're not going to be able to do and get comfortable and do what they're capable of doing. So long-winded, like I always get, to say, if that's the scenario with Andy Pages, to where if he goes a couple of weeks, which he's going to, because, by the way, he went through 3-week-long slumps in high A Great Lakes, and we point blank told you this is coming. So if your plan with Andy Pages is, if he struggles for 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to send his ass back down to AAA Oklahoma City because we can't afford to have those empty at-bats, then move him somewhere else that he can get everyday at-bats and go get a prospect that will replenish what you need to in your system. That's the blind spot in the system right now for me.
Capitalize on the value that Andy Pahe has, which he has a lot of value. There's a lot of other organizations that would have him and rightfully play him as a starting outfielder for them this upcoming season. It's something that, even the Dodgers last year, they relied very heavily on Andy Pages, and he did a really good job last year with his first rookie season coming in. Now is the time to decide what you're planning on doing with him. And especially since they brought in a guy like a Hae-Sung Kim, who could be a determining factor as far as what happens with Andy Pages during this upcoming season. Because if they feel like he is a starting caliber second baseman right away for the Dodgers, which remember, for Kim, he has the ability to be optioned down, so he doesn't have to be that. But if he's big league ready and they want to play him, that forces Tommy Edman into a whole lot of center field, and that means that there's really no playing time at all for an Andy Pages. And if that's the case, if he's sitting on the bench just like he did during the entire World Series, you are missing out big time on the value that he brings, and you're adding to the agingness of this roster. This roster is starting to get older. Points that we've been talking about quite a bit. They're going to have to make this a determination for him or for a player like James Outman, who certainly is in this conversation as well and has the opportunity to earn a spot onto this roster, or should have an opportunity to earn a spot on this roster.
And because of that blind spot that we just talked about, I think that's keeping Mookie Betts at center field instead of moving him to second. Tommy Edman is short and opening up center field for an Andy Pages to have every day at bats, which is the scenario that I have been hoping happens. And a lot of it is because I'd like to see Mookie Betts at second base instead of shortstop, for one, and two, it solves the Andy Pages James Outman situation. It just does. I wouldn't have an issue with the platoon between Outman and Pages. And that leads us into our next question. Christopher Navarro wants you, Austin, to what is Pages' major league line against left-handed pitching and maybe splits against right-handers? Can you pull that up for Andy Pages?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and pull it up in just a second.
Yeah, we'll get to that here in a minute. But yeah, we have a comment here from Vin1988, my favorite social media handle, that he's disagreeing, or she, or whoever it is out there, that baseball is the hardest sport. They're claiming it's bowling because baseball players don't have to eat buffalo wings and nachos while they're trying to play baseball at the same time, right? Not Me Solo says it's hard for me to imagine letting go of teammates after they won a championship and letting them go, pick up some more pieces, keep the majority of last year's team. Yeah, so we have a wonderful, wonderful crowd logged in. Do you got that pulled up yet?
Yes. So Andy Pages, which we just have one season to go off of. We just have about 400 plate appearances from last season, about 100 from against left-handed pitching, and about 300 versus right-handed pitching. So then that's typically what you're going to see for a lot of these different splits. Versus right-handed pitching, he was about an 82 WRC plus, which actually is not terrible, especially for rookies against the same-sided pitching. Yeah. We see for a lot of different platoon guys. And one of the guys that I point to often talking about platoon guys is a guy like a Kerry Carpenter out in Detroit, who last year was a strict platoon versus right-handed pitching because he bats on the left side. He had like a 17 WRC plus versus left-handed pitching last year. And so it's not anywhere close to as extreme versus right-handed pitching, but this is what people will point to as far as a platoon Andy Pages, because last year he had a 157 WRC plus against left-handed pitching. Andy Pages was extremely productive during, again, just 100 plate appearances. So it's a limited sample size. Extremely productive against left-handed pitching. Andy Pages was and is worthy of a lot of those at-bats, which you have to find a way to be able to put him in during those at-bats while also being able to continue to the development versus right-handed pitching as well. Because if you want him to be a full-time player at some point, he's going to need to see at-bats against right-handed pitching too.
So James Outman, Andy Pages, and who for Luis Robert Jr.?
I mean, it's an interesting suggestion.
I mean, it wouldn't be just those two, would it?
No, I don't think it would not be just those two. It would have to be some sort of prospect, because with Luis Robert, I believe he has up to 3 different additional years of control. I believe the last 2 years are different club options, but they're reasonable for the production potential that he has. When we're talking about Luis Robert, this tools are very much there as far as his power, his defensive ability, his ability to play center field. All of that very much is there. Very tool heavy, very a little bit at times inconsistent offensively because of his low walks, high strikeouts, and because of the injuries that have happened to him over the course of a couple of years. I think it would probably take more than. Well, actually, that's a really good question. I don't know. It depends on the White Sox evaluation of Andy Pages, because he could be one that fits right into what they're wanting to do. I don't think they necessarily want 2 guys with just one minor league option because of the way that they're trying to build their roster, although certainly you could try to do something like that. But Andy Pages plus something, I don't know what exactly that would be. Could be an option. He certainly defensively would fit in the holes for the Dodgers, and providing a pure center fielder, and would force Tommy Edman to be more of a utility / spend a lot more time on the infield. But I don't see that happening at this point right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get into our Down on the Farm segment, because we've had a lot of requests. The 2 guys we want to talk about tonight is Josue de Paula. I'm going to go ahead and clip over here. Austin, you can see that, right?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So, Austin, if you would open up your notes, and this is going to be heavy on your end, because I think what people are really going to want out of Josue de Paula, they're going to want to see him so they can see his skills with their own eyes. So I got the video up for him, and then they're going to want to hear about all of his statistical numbers and whether they're good or bad, the good parts of his numbers and the bad parts of his numbers. So there you go, Austin.
Yeah, so Josue de Paula, I'll call him Depot. That's what I was heard a lot from the dugout, Depot. Very, very toolsy type of player. A lot of the skill set that he has comes from his bat, very much so. His bat is going to carry him a long ways. His swing, very pretty type of swing, and he's able to be very effective offensively of what he's able to produce. So last year, he spent time between Single A, Rancho Cucamonga, and High A, Great Lakes. Had 107 games, put up 268 average, 404 on base percentage with a 405 slugging percentage. That equated, combined between those 2 stops, at a 130 WRC plus. Actually was a little bit more productive once he got to the Great Lakes level. And I think with Josue de Paula, the first thing that it starts off with, as far as one of the biggest parts to his game that he relies very heavily on and very is impactful for him, has to do with his eye. His eye is absolutely incredible. Last year, combined between those 2 levels, put up a 17.5% walk percentage. And if you talk about his time in Great Lakes, at High A, it was 21.7%. I did a little bit of research because that is astronomically high for walk percentage. In the last 10 seasons of Midwest League Baseball, which is the High A level that Josue de Paula was in, that was the 2nd highest walk percentage for batters that had at least 200 plate appearances. Josue de Paula is doing it at a very different level. And it's not just that. You talk about with both of these guys, they hit the ball incredibly hard. Their exit velos, which I will get into a little bit.
By the way, these 2 right here, this one right here is 109. Yes. The next one you're getting ready to see is 108.
Yes. No, they're absolutely ridiculous. He's able to, it's not just that he has a really good eye, it's that he's able to make really good contact as well. Hits the ball incredibly well with those exit velos, leads to a lot of people to wanting to see him potentially tap into a little bit more power. Last year hit 10 home runs, 138 ISO. There's still, I think, even more room to potentially grow in the future with that power production. We've seen that with other power sluggers coming up through the minor league ranks as far as tapping into that power a little bit later. But even last year, he's got a lot of other skill sets too. If you're talking about stolen bases, Josue de Paula had 27 stolen bases last year. it's a little bit surprising when I looked at that. And it talked about his strikeout numbers. He's able to making consistent enough contact. And even there's times where he doesn't swing as much. It still put up last year combined a strikeout percentage less than 20%. Really talented player with a lot of tools and skill set to grow into as he continues to go forward. His eye is unbelievable what he's able to do. And if he taps into more consistent contact, more consistent, if he's able to hit even just a little bit more for power, because he has such a high floor with his walk percentage, because he is able to put a consistent enough bat to ball skills out there, his bat has a very high floor, and with the exit velos and stuff, it's also a high ceiling for him as well, which leads to a lot of excitement. Plays the outfield. It's nothing spectacular defense out there, but the bat is going to be the thing that's going to carry him. And also look out for that sneaky stolen base numbers too.
So what is DePaula's career OPS plus number?
So WRC plus wise, it depends by year. So doesn't have total overall. So last year it was 130 is what he was able to produce combined between Rancho and Great Lakes. The year before that in 2023, it was 118. That was at Rancho. And then in 2022 at the Dominican League, which don't put a ton of stock into these numbers, 162 is what he was able to produce.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else that you want to add to Josue de Paula? Obviously, very talented. He's a young man that reminds Dodgers fans of Yordan Alvarez, a player that the Dodgers traded, turned into an all-star player for Houston.
Yeah.
So it just kind of seems like Dodgers fans have just fear that de Paula is going to be the next Yordan Alvarez.
I will. The one thing that I was also able to look up, especially the last month of his season in Great Lakes, he took off. You look at his numbers from August 8th through September, through the end of the season, which was September 8th. He put up 167 WRC plus, and the walks and strikeout numbers remained consistent to what they had been throughout the entire season. It's a very pretty swing. And there's so many skills and tool sets, and especially with the Dodgers, they haven't made a lot of mistakes. Trading away Yordan Alvarez was a mistake for the Dodgers to do. And when you have a player that reminds a lot of Dodgers fans, especially swing-wise, looking at the comparison, I know that's been done on Twitter, on X before, is looking at the swing comparisons between him and Yordan Alvarez. You look at that and just the potential that he has. He's one of those guys that a lot of Dodgers fans want to do everything they possibly can to keep. He's got a ton of upside going forward with him, skill level. Baseball field, especially on the hitting side, there are very few things offensively that Josue de Paula can't do. And
obviously he has lower launch angles, but if you want to know how much power he has, just look at this opposite field home run. I mean, that's just kind of an average hit for him, and it's a home run because his ball carries so much, because he has such very impressive exit velos. Another young man that hits the ball as hard as anybody in the organization is a very quickly rising prospect, outfield prospect the Dodgers got back in the Michael Busch and Yency Almonte trade. That is Zyhir Hope. Take over, Austin.
Yeah, so I have not had the chance to watch in person Zyhir Hope yet, but I could not be more thrilled for coming up in, I believe, 79 days, or whenever he gets the call up to Great Lakes, assuming that he gets the call up to Great Lakes, doesn't go straight to Tulsa or anything crazy like that. It's going to be fun and amazing to watch Zyhir Hope. He was WRC plus wise, if you limit it to 250 plate appearances or so, which does include about 20 or so complex league level at bats, even though his numbers at Rancho were better than complex league level. He was the most productive hitter at the minor league level for the Dodgers last year. In Rancho, in 248 plate appearances, put up a 144 WRC plus, hit almost 290, 287, 415 on base percentage, 490 slugging. And I think some of that power is really there. Again, another one of these guys that's going to walk at nearly a 15% clip. Strikeouts are a little bit higher, about 24%. But with that, what he's able to produce there, especially power-wise, it's really impressive. And he's ranked towards the top of a lot of these different prospect lists. And I think one of the reasons why that is, and does not come from me, I want to give credit where credit is due and where I found this. This comes from at @upper_Beck. I believe he's a prospect writer for some other Dynasty Dugout. I don't have a lot of familiarity with that, so I'm taking a lot of this for granted based on the research that he has done. When we're talking about exit velos, it's not just the numbers. When you're talking about trying to evaluate exit velos as a whole, all the batted ball data that you have, one of the best indications there, and there's been a lot of research that's been done into that, talks about 90th percentile exit velo. Now, on StatCast, what you can see is the average exit velo, take all of the different batted ball data, and then take the average of the results, and then get that exit velo right there. There's also max exit velo, what's the hardest that you've hit. 90th percentile is somewhere in between that has really good predictive power as far as future success on the field. There's been a lot of research that's been done into that. And what he found is, and this is quoting at @upper_Beck on X, Zyhir Hope's 90th percentile exit velo would have been a top 25 mark in Major League Baseball, tied with Juan Soto and Junior Caminero, and even better than guys like Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, Fernando Tatis Jr., Bryce Harper, and Bobby Witt. That is the type of exit velo that was being showcased from a guy like a Zyhir Hope. You combine that with going to the Arizona Fall League this past season, hit, I believe, like a 470-foot home run during there. Just ridiculous what he's able to do. He's got a lot of power and a lot of other unique tools and skill sets that this guy who came over from the trade, the Michael Busch trade, him and Jackson Ferris came over in exchange for Michael Busch, Yency Almonte, seems to be an absolute steal and has a lot of different skill set, a lot of different tools to be able to tap into. I'm excited to see him play for in person for the first time this upcoming season. I hope he's ready for some 30-degree weather baseball coming up here in about 80 days or so.
So if you were to evaluate maybe some of his holes statistically, is there any red flags as far as any statistics that say, hey, this needs to improve?
I mean, you could be nitpicky. You could say, right, okay, maybe a strikeout percentage, 24%. Okay, that's doable if you were to combine that with the power level that he has towards the upper levels. But is that going to increase as he faces more consistent pitching at the upper levels of the system?
Right.
That would be where a lot of my focus would.
That's at least what to look at, right? Yeah.
That's certainly what to look at, because if that jumps up closer to 30% at Great Lakes this upcoming season, then you might have some concerns that could translate and continue to jump up a little bit more once he gets to Double-A pitching. Yeah. So that would be the thing that I look out to. But the potential, the high level potential for Zyhir Hope is just about through the roof with a lot of this data, with the batted ball data, with all these underlying metrics. There's a lot of reason that you could believe in a ton of power potential that he has, and a lot of different unique skill sets. And he's a very patient hitter based on of the approach that he's had. So I'm excited to see him a little bit more during this upcoming season, see what he's able to do.
Yeah, and he finished last season on the IL, and then we don't really get very good video in the Arizona Fall League. So to be honest with you, he's one of the guys that not only have we not seen him in person, he's also one of the guys that we have just seen video of him play the least amount, right? I mean, because he doesn't have a whole lot of video at Rancho, and then obviously we don't watch the Arizona Fall League games, and so it's going to be very fun to watch Zyhir Hope. So, okay, man, this has been a whole lot of fun tonight. We have had just a ridiculous crowd, Austin. This show continues to grow, and I'll tell you what, we just can't thank all of you Dodgers dogs out there as part of the Dodgers Daily Network. You Dodgers dogs are definitely the best baseball crowd on earth. I will say that till I go to my grave. We cannot, it is humbling, it is flattering to see all of the great support that you Dodgers dogs continue to give Austin and I, and we are so thankful. So, Austin, it's been a whole lot of fun tonight. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun tonight. Just checked my phone one more time to see if we had any Roki Sasaki updates. I don't believe that we have any, or at least none that I've received notifications for. So unless people are slacking a little bit with the people that I have notifications on, we are still waiting for that news, and it's exciting. Yeah. It can take that. It takes a little bit of patience to be able to see what happens. Regardless, if the Dodgers get him, I think they're in a better position because they're getting an elite talent that's close to or just about big league ready that you can put into this rotation, and you're adding another one of these guys that has high potential to be potentially a front of the rotation type of guy, but not relied upon to be that type of guy for super cheap. It'd be so exciting to be able to do that if the Dodgers land Roki Sasaki. If he decides elsewhere, the Dodgers are still in a really good position, and they still have a ton of talent that they could rely upon and call up, and that are very, very talented as well. And then you go down to the farm system as well, and you talk about not just the prospect list, but the reasons why these guys are very highly touted. There's good reasons to be excited about the Dodgers and what they are continuing to do, the scouting process, the development process that the Dodgers have. It's an amazing thing to watch this thing unfold, and I'm excited to see this machine continue to grind, continue to turn, and push to try to win as many World Series championships as it's possible. It is a great time to be a Dodgers fan, and that is saying the very least.
Yeah. I'm used to the college. I mean, I've been around the college scene my entire life, growing up in a college town. And so the free agency thing, the recruiting thing, guys going and taking all their visits and weighing all their decisions, that's just part of the process. Yeah. So I know some fans get impatient with the free agency process of it, but these decisions are so huge. They're life-changing. And so these guys need to turn. Just think about the way the Dodgers make decisions, right? They don't just say, oh, man, we're getting freaking tired of this situation. Let's just make a damn decision and go, right? They don't do that. They uncover every stone. They turn over every stone. They make sure they have every fact and every detail discussed and vetted, and then they make the best decision they possibly can based on that information. And however long that takes to get that decision made, that's how long it takes. These are very high-stakes situations, very high-stakes decisions. So is going picking which college you could go to, but not as much anymore because there's a transfer portal. You can transfer out to the first year, but until the transfer portal, these are huge life-changing decisions. So hang in there with Roki Sasaki. The flexibility he's going to give the Dodgers, the contract he's going to give the Dodgers versus the potential output could possibly be the cheapest contract in the history of baseball if it all works out properly. So hang in there with Roki Sasaki. Just remember, all great things are worth waiting for. Give yourselves a standing ovation out there in the chat tonight. You Dodgers dogs are the best crowd on earth. And as always, it's a great day to be a Dodger.